Hey guys, welcome to another Lifestyle of Eden podcast. Today I have a very special guest and longtime friend, CJ Jones. CJ, thanks for coming on, bro.
No problem, man. It's a pleasure to be here.
Man, it's probably been, let's see, we're in 2024, I'm 30 now. It has been 10 years. I went to Iron City Gym at 20 years old. So it's been 10, we've known each other for 10 years.
It's been a decade, yeah.
Wow. So, we met whenever I moved back from Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to Iron City Gym. We were both in fitness. We were both competing, both trainers, nutritionists, doing that whole nine. And that's really how we met. But kind of like explain, because you've been in the fitness industry probably, I've been in it for well over a decade, close to 15 years, but how old are you now?
34.
34, so I'm 30. You've been in it probably longer than I have.
Yeah.
So explain a little bit of your background, how you got into fitness, because you not only were, one of the reasons that we actually got real close, I was just telling somebody this the other day, the reason you and I connected was because I was best friends with T. Fred's family.
Yep.
Terrence Frederick's
a
family.
teammate of mine. Yeah.
So, T. Fred obviously going to the league and, the NFL and playing with you at A&M and everything else. Well, his family, the Stricklers were literally my very best friends. So that was our initial connection, actually.
Yeah.
But kind of explain a little bit, your stuff with college football, then going to the NFL, and how that kind of led into you with fitness, because you also, you were a pro physique athlete with Muscle Mania and stuff like that. So kind of give a little bit of a rundown with how that developed and everything.
Yeah, man. So was a dual sport athlete in college. I played football and I ran track. And what initially got me interested in fitness was seeing how my body would change from shaping it for optimal performance in track to what it looked and felt like to be an optimal performance for football. Those were two totally different bodies, training for different skill sets, a different amount of body fat, a different amount of lean mass. And I was so curious as to how are they doing this? Why is it programmed like this? Why is it periodized like this? Why are we changing these things? So I had an opportunity to play professional football for a short amount of time, and it was great while I was there. And when I was done, I always had this thing in my mind, I want to be a big, swole guy. That was always a dream of mine, and I could never get as big as I wanted to because I had to be able to perform, right? So when I was done playing football, what I thought I wanted to do was to be a collegiate level strength and conditioning coach. That's what I thought I wanted to do.
Okay, yeah.
So I interned in Kansas City for a year, which is where I played, and I found out very, very fast that babysitting guys in their mid-20s to some of the guys in their early 30s who were a little bit easier to handle, babysitting those guys, begging them to come and work out wasn't very fun. And I wasn't moving the needle that much. When you get to the NFL level, a lot of the training is about preventative maintenance. We're not really pushing limits real hard. We're not doing the crazy training and the crazy grinding that they are doing in college. Right?
Yeah.
So I'm keeping guys from getting hurt. We're getting a little bit stronger, maybe a little bit faster, but we're really not moving the needle, right?
Yeah.
I'm taking a guy from running a 4.38 to maybe running a 4.36.
Yeah.
Right? So I wasn't moving the needle and having the effect I wanted to have, so I came back home to Houston and got into in-person training where I could move the needle on people that needed to lose 30, 40, 50, 60 pounds. I felt like I was having more of an impact. And through that, I found competing. The first gym I worked at, the owner was like, you should really consider competing. And this one, I didn't have necessarily the competence to get shredded or put on a bunch of size. I was just being active in the gym because that's what I was used to. So that's initially how I found fitness, and that's how I found competing, which ultimately ended up being the thing that made me thirsty for knowledge about how the human body is changing, the metabolism and the science behind building tissue and things like that. That's how it started.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, because when we met, you were competing with Muscle Mania. You were coaching a bunch of clients. Me and you were two of the prep coaches over there at Iron City Gym and everything else. So, that was, let's see, I left there 2016. You left there shortly after.
Yeah.
2018?
2017.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So at what point did you, because, obviously now, which is really where me me and you have always kept up with each other on social media.
Right.
And actually, I'm not very tech savvy. Now I'm getting there. But
There you go.
I had posted a thing on my Facebook story. You know, I said technology is the enemy. And you had messaged me and really kind of helped me out with certain technological things. You said, hey, man, try this, try this, try this.
Yeah.
We reconnected. But the thing that we really reconnected on was something that me and you both had back then. Because like I said, I think that, you know, thank God that we had so many trainers and nutritionists.
Oh, dude, there were like 20.
At least.
So many.
At least. But honestly, you know, and the other top trainer that was there, which we won't mention him on this video, you just told me isn't even in fitness.
He doesn't
anymore.
do fitness anymore.
And so we're probably some of the only ones that not only stuck with it, but that actually ended up making a living in an industry that very much breeds poverty in so many avenues, right? In so many ways. So, but the thing that we always had back then, which was kind of what our connection point was now, was essentially the mindset. You know, this work ethic and mindset, the way we view things, you know, waking up early at 4 a.m. or, you know, doing this, that, and the other, betting on yourself and this, that, or the other. So how did you, that's really like your thing that you hone in on now, is mindset. How did you end up getting into the mindset, and what does that look like?
Man, so for me, I really think it started early. When people hear that I was a high-level athlete and I've done these things, people automatically picture a golden child that was the fastest since they were 5 and just happened to be great at everything, right? But for me, it started early, man. I had braces on my legs until I was like 7.
Wow.
Right? So at 7 years old, the doctors told me, you know, sports are a no-go. You'll never be very athletic. If you do play, you'll probably suck, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I always had a chip on my shoulder, and I always felt like I was counted out, right? So my personality, or one of the character traits that built in me, was if I'm just willing to go harder than everybody else, something has to happen. Something has to happen if I'm willing to suffer more, work harder, put in more time, run, you know, just put in so much effort. Something has to happen. And I felt like that's what I had to do because I was starting behind.
Yeah.
That's how it started. And I think it takes a level of self-awareness to say, okay, this is what everybody else is doing. I'm going to do double. Right?
Yeah.
I'm going to do more. All right, everybody's doing this many hours of this. I'm going to do double.
Yeah.
You're doing this amount of practice. I'm going to do double. So that's where it started of I felt like I had to work harder to be the same as everybody.
Yeah.
That's where it started for sure.
You know, that's interesting because I actually read this quote a couple months ago, but it was crazy because not only have I been saying this, but I've felt this way my entire life where no matter how ahead I get or how high performance I'm training or how high performance I'm living, I always feel like I'm behind.
That monkey's always on your back.
Yeah, always feel like I'm behind. And I remember one time I was living in the newest high-rise in downtown Houston, and my dad comes in there. He says, "Nick, how's business?" I said, "It's good. I've made $8 grand this week." And my dad looked at me. He goes, "Really?" And I go, "Yeah, business is going really, really well, you know." And like I said, it was the newest high-rise. It was an expensive place to live in. I was doing very well at the time. But if I made $8 grand yesterday, I don't look at it as, oh, so I'm good for the rest of the week. It's, no, today's a new day. Like, I'm okay, if I don't make anything in the next 3 days, I'm behind. Like, you know, and so it's that constant, like you said, the monkey on your back, and this is like a certain mindset shift where you never, you know, one of the things I tell people a lot is if you compete against others, you're always limiting yourself. And the reason being is because if all I'm trying to do is beat everybody around me, if the person to my right is the highest performer and he's here, that means all I'm trying to do is get
A
here.
little bit above that.
But what if my best is actually up here? So anytime I'm actually competing with others, not only am I shorting myself, but not only that, I always talk about how others really will deceive you. Others, even the people you love, will say, dude, you're doing really, really well right now. But what if I'm only giving 70%? Now I'm going to sacrifice the other 30% because I go, no, well, they think I'm doing well. They're actually deceiving me. They don't know they're deceiving me, but they're deceiving me because I'm not giving 100%, and that's a mindset thing where it's totally off the charts.
I was gonna say, so you hit on something really, really important when we start talking about high performance, right? And it's self-awareness, right?
Yeah, right. That's good.
Awareness of ceilings, capabilities, and how they can kind of be set for us on accident. And if you're not careful enough to be self-aware and notice the ceilings that people set for you, you can cap what you're capable of on accident.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And one of the things you're talking about is always having this feeling of like, okay, I did this, but that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Which is one of the things we learn in football. And the way they say it is, you don't have a 12-game season. You have a 1-game season every single
game.
week.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If you win, great. If you lose, great. Next season, we got a whole new season on Monday. You win, great. You lose, great. That's in the past. What are you going to do now?
Yeah.
So I guess the question for me is, where do you think that mentality came from for you? Because that's something that a lot of people don't have, right?
No.
When we think about a high performer versus somebody that's not a high performer, you talk about making $8,000 in a week and feeling like you have so much more to do. There are people that would make $8,000 in a month and throw their hands up and relax.
Yeah.
So where do you think that comes from for you?
You know, there's a couple different things. So, one, I've told this story multiple times. In fact, in my new book that's coming out on June 10th, I had told this story. I was a little kid. I was probably 6 or 7 years old. And I'll never forget, my dad told me, and it's driven me a lot of my life. He said, Nick, he goes, because of your hyper-focus and how driven you are in life, he goes, you will either be the president of the United States or you will be the head of a cartel.
That's awesome.
He said, you choose which path you want to go down, but because of how driven and obsessive you are,
right.
He goes, you will get there.
Right.
And I remember, you know, my dad, we grew up, you know, I don't think I've ever told this story publicly. Only like 2 or 3 people really know this story. But I was about 20 years old. I was 19 or 20. I just moved back from Louisiana. I decided, hey, I want to start competing as a bodybuilder. Bodybuilding is much different than men's physique in that men's physique is expensive, but bodybuilding with all the supplementation and the crazy ones, I mean, it's crazy expensive.
Right.
So for a 19 or 20-year-old just coming out of college, I dropped out of college, you know, that's a lot of money. And so my dad was helping me out, and I moved back here. And I remember I was sitting in their living room, and we grew up doing very well. My dad always was a very, very, very successful entrepreneur. And so we were spoiled to the max. We've traveled to different countries, you know, we've done first class, all these different things. We were just so spoiled. Well, I remember my dad, we were 20, I was 20 years old, and he and my mom sat me down, and all of a sudden he started bawling his eyes out. Never forget this. Bawling his eyes out, fell on his knees in the living room. And he said, Nick, he goes, we can't pay for your bodybuilding anymore. I said, what's going on? He said, I have a stack of bills upstairs on my desk, and I don't know how I'm going to pay it. Ooh. The money's gone. We're completely broke. And the thing is, my dad ended up coming out of that fully.
Of course he did.
But at that time, he was.
It got scary.
Yeah, he was broken.
Yeah.
You know, he goes, I don't know how we're going to pay for the house. I don't know how we're going to do anything. He goes, we have no money. And I remember Corey Kaye, he's the Hollywood celebrity trainer that ended up getting me out to Hollywood in 2016 to train with Michael B. Jordan and all these people. Corey, you know, he's in Creed 3. Like, he's the one that trains the people for Creed and does all these things. Well, he was like my big brother in Louisiana. He doesn't really have a family, so he spends, like parents, so he would spend Thanksgiving and stuff with our family and everything else. I remember I told my family that day, I said, hey, it's okay. Like, don't worry about it. I'll figure it out. Don't worry. So I walked out of the back door. I went in my car, and when I got in my car, I called Corey and I started bawling my eyes out. I was 20 years old, so 10 years ago. I started bawling my eyes out, and I said, Corey, and Corey knew how successful my dad was. And I told him what happened. He goes, Nick, he goes, listen, your dad has always been very successful, and he's going to be successful. He goes, but right now, your family needs you. And you have one of two choices. You have lived a lifestyle that's been very lavish. So you can do one of two things. You can either lower the standards of your living because you don't have that, or if you want to keep living that, you better go freaking grind.
You gotta go hunt.
And you better go hustle for your family.
You gotta go hunt.
I got 3 jobs and within about a year and a half, my fitness and nutrition business blew up. But I was always, I've always kind of had like my back against the wall, and it's like the great saying, hard times wakes up the genius. And so I've always had that within me from a young age. I've always had this like obsessive focus of like so competitive, I'm going to be the best, whatever it may be. But then I've just had certain stages in my life where my back was totally against the wall, and you don't really have a choice. I mean, you do have a choice technically, but if you want to keep doing the things that you want to do, you've got to put in the work to say, to do whatever you want to get.
Right.
And that was something that I think a lot of people, they either are not willing to do it, or they don't even realize that you can actually do that. It's scaling the mindset of like, hey, no, if you, like in fitness, I remember I came out with a video in 2017. I was living in the high rise, I filmed it in the high rise, and the video did very well on YouTube, and I posted it. It said, how to make $100K a year more in the fitness industry. And I remember people were blown away. They were like, $100K a year? How are you making $100K a year? And I go, no, I just said how to make $100K a year. I said, I'm making $200K.
Right.
Don't limit me.
Yeah.
So they're like, how did you do that in an industry that doesn't really produce that?
Right.
And so it's just a different hustle, go-getter mindset that is overly scaling all the time, and then putting myself around people like you or Wes or these different high performance people, where whenever I say, hey dude, let's really go for 15 grand a month, and they go, 15?
Yeah.
No, let's go for 50.
Yeah.
And then you come around Wes, and Wes goes, 50? He goes, no, make that by the 10th of the month. We need to get 100.
Right.
So you just kind of go, wait a second, this stuff is possible. But this is in every area of life, you know? So it's hard for me to know. On one hand, I think that you either have that mentality or you don't. But one thing I will say is I do genuinely believe, which we'll talk about this too on this podcast, is I do genuinely believe that if you don't, you can develop it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I believe in the law of exposure. Right?
Explain
which is what that's called. There's stages like unconscious incompetence. Like you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
And I was in a similar predicament as you. When I first got into the online space, I was like, if I made X amount of money a month, that would be great.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm talking to my coach, and he's like, that's it? He's like, you can literally have anything you want, and that's all you want. But again, because I hadn't been exposed to that, I didn't know what could really be mine.
Yeah.
Until, just like you're saying, when I get around these people doing these crazy numbers, making $200K a month, $500K a month, $1 million a month, those things were never possibilities in my mind because I hadn't been exposed to it.
Yeah.
So that's what the law of exposure is you kind of don't even know that these things exist until you're exposed to them.
You have to get, and this was what Wes has really taught me so much of, which I've already known this, but I guess in the simplicity that he puts it, you go, wow, is you have to start getting around higher level thinking people.
Man, I'm telling you, that is what changed my life completely. When I was at Iron City, when I first got into in-person training, there was a trainer there. We were just talking about him, and he was like, "Yeah, man, personal training really don't make that much money. You might make 20 or 30K a year, right? But that's because that's what he was doing." And I just refused. I was like, "There's no way. That I'm too good. My experience is different. Like I have a resume. I don't believe what you're telling me."
Yeah.
But his exposure hadn't been anything different. That's the level of success he had. He'd been around that kind of environment for very long. And then when I switched gyms, one of the older guys has been the most instrumental in my life. His name is Brad Radoff. He's a hedge fund manager. And he's the one that opened up my eye. We're talking about a guy that makes over $50 million a year, right? So when I started asking him questions, because I knew he was a wealth of knowledge, so I annoyed him with questions about how to make more money. What should I be doing? Da-da-da-da-da. And one day I was like, if I could make 10 grand a month, that would be great. And I was super excited about it. He was like you're talking about 100 grand a year. Like, I don't want you to have a money conversation with me until you're thinking about how to make $1 million a year. And I was like,
Well, and the thing is, especially when we were like at Iron City, the common thing
that wasn't the environment.
Not only was it not the environment, but if you even wanted to get close to that, let's just be honest, what was the conversation is, hey, listen, you're going to have to become a stripper, or you're going to have to do that. You know, you're going to have to be doing sexually other things in order to get that money in the fitness industry because you're using your body in that type of way. And that was, for me, that was never something I was even willing to step
not
into.
an option.
It's not an option for me.
No.
So, you know, now I think the way, well, here's the other thing too. I will say this. When I dropped out of college, I didn't even finish my freshman year. It was second semester freshman year. I didn't tell my parents. I just showed up at the house one day from Louisiana.
Hey guys, I'm back.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, I thought my parents were stupid, right? They would say, hey, Nick, you know, why aren't you in class? And I said, oh, you know, my professors, they gave us off for the week. Mm-hmm. And my dad called the next day and found out Nick's gone.
Yeah.
And my dad flipped at first. I'll never forget. That night he flipped. My mom, as my mom always does, really kept her cool. Because my dad had the notion, you know, he's been the typical old school businessman of, you need to go to college and get a degree.
This is how it works.
Yeah. And so, but around 2012, when I was graduating high school and stuff, that started to change. That was not the scenario anymore.
Right.
And so, you can be, you know, all tatted up, and you don't have to have a degree, and you can still be monumentally successful.
100%.
Well, my dad, I remember I was 20, I moved back into their home. My dad came up to my room and said, okay, Nick, after talking with your mom, we want to support you, and we know about your drive. And the TV was on in my bedroom. My dad pointed, I was 20 years old. My dad pointed at the TV and said, Nick, you're so driven. If you really take this far enough, he goes, you see these people? And he points to the TV. He goes, you could be training them. He was basically saying you're going to be a celebrity trainer.
Right.
I was 20 years old. Before I was 22, I was in Hollywood training with Corey Kaye and Michael B. Jordan. I have a video on my Instagram.
Yeah.
Training with them. And Corey is bringing me out to Hollywood. Corey is referring clients to me. I'm getting clients all over the country, big time clients. And, you know, we're going out and I'm looking to my right and who's next to me? It's Justin Bieber. You know, all these different people. So it was crazy because it was like two things. It was like, number one, my parents have always just believed in me. Even if they didn't believe in it at first, they're just like, whatever, we're going to support Nick. Mm-hmm. And I felt like that was always a huge thing that I've always had in my life, that they've always just supported me and believed in me. But at the end of the day, too, you know, the scripture says that out of the tongue comes life and death. And my dad spoke life over me.
Right. He
said, hey, listen, you could be doing this. And sure enough, less than 24 months later, I'm literally in Hollywood.
Got you. So, question, how instrumental do you think that was to come from a family of high performers, right? Because your dad is a high performer. You had exposure to different possibilities, different things, entrepreneurship, making a lot of money, right? Yeah. How instrumental do you think that was to your development and mentality versus somebody that comes from the typical story where their parents don't believe in them, and it's because they haven't accomplished a whole lot, and they think you're going to fail,
and
that those things don't
work. What your parents have shown you, right? So
100%.
Whenever I was getting ready for the Phil Heath Classic, I was 21. We were at Iron City. They filmed. We had a documentary that was filmed on me, and I'll never forget that thing. That thing went Facebook. That it got thousands and thousands of views immediately. And one of the things I said in that video, I said, people always talk about my work ethic. I never miss a meal. If it's 6 ounces of chicken, it's not 5.9. It's not 6.1. Yeah. It's 6 ounces. Like, I never miss a meal. I never miss cardio session. I never miss anything. And I literally said in that video, I said, all I remember was one of three things about my dad. My dad coached all of our sports when we were kids. My dad was always out of town. The first 14 years of my life, all the way up to 8th grade, I don't really remember my dad actually being here. Unless he was coaching us for our games and practices, right. But he was traveling constantly for work. But the third thing I do remember very clearly, all the way up through high school, when we woke up for school at 6 a.m., my dad was already in his office.
There you go.
When we went to bed at 10 or 11, my dad was still in his office.
Right.
I literally said that in that documentary. That type of work ethic is all I've ever known.
Right.
Because that's what he put in front of me.
He set the example.
So he puts that in front of me. And then also I remember being at, because I got kicked out of Katy. I was facing 2 to 20 years of prison whenever I was 17. And I got kicked out of Katy twice. And the first time I got kicked out, I went to, the first time I wasn't kicked out. The second time the first time I was recommended by the sergeant to leave. But when I left Katy, I was going to go to a boarding school, and then I ended up going to Second Baptist Private School in Houston. And I remember I was a freshman there, and you have to remember I was a freshman and I was a fat kid, and but the thing is, I thought I was all that.
Yeah.
And I remember this junior in high school, this guy that was a junior in high school, he was a point guard there. He was sitting next to me at lunch. He was trying to bash me in front of everybody. He said, "Your parents have deceived you by uplifting you way too much. You think way too much about yourself." And I look back and I go, no, you know what? My parents built such a self-esteem in me my whole life that I was willing to bet on myself 7 days a week my entire life. I still am. And it's so high that even if my parents, they don't, but even if my parents did talk down on me now,
Wouldn't do anything.
wouldn't touch me.
It's too late.
No, you've ruined me in a
It's
good
too
way.
late.
So, the mindset thing has always really been there, and I've got to give my parents a lot of credit for that. But like I said, I've also just had it. But the thing is, the way I think that it gets developed, which me and you have talked about quite a bit, is we use our fitness and nutrition businesses really as the gateway drug to change your entire life.
Absolutely.
And so, I tell people this all the time. Whenever you walk into, here's the thing, when you wake up early, and you're waking up before everybody, you're working harder, you don't miss a meal, you start to look good, and you start looking really good, you develop this habitual confidence of discipline because of the behaviors that are in your life, and it develops such a confidence where it doesn't matter what room I walk into, I own the room.
Right.
Nobody in here looks better than me. Nobody in here works harder than me. It's like The Rock. The Rock walks into an entire place.
And the world stops.
Yeah. He walks into a place where the military was all in there, and he literally says on video, he goes, "I respect every one of you, but none of you will ever outwork me."
Right.
The Rock, he has that confidence because he knows, hey, by the way, at 4 a.m., I'm already in the gym.
Right.
By 6 a.m., I've already had 2 workouts and my first meal.
Right.
And so you develop that confidence, but that confidence is only earned.
Right. So confidence is proof to yourself that you can keep promises to yourself.
Yeah.
So what happens is when people think confidence comes from the abs or the pecs or the biceps, kind of, but not really. It came from how many times I've done this to get this bicep, how many workouts I've done to build this chest. I kept hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of promises to myself that this was my side effect.
Yeah.
And that's what I talk to people about all the time. Your body, your physique, your level of body fat, your level of conditioning is a side effect of who you are.
It's a sign.
And how much confidence you have in yourself. Because if you have confidence, you keep promises to yourself, right? What makes you so confident isn't the fact that you bench X amount or you've done this and you've done that. You have confidence because you've had to follow through with things over and over. And when I know I follow through, I'm confident that I can do anything because if I say I'm going to do it, I know I'm going to follow through.
Right.
It's certainty of self.
Right.
Right? So if I say, hey, I'm going to prep for a show, or hey, I'm going to start this business, or hey, I have a goal to make X amount of money, the history I have with myself, the rapport of keeping these promises to myself gives me proof that because I keep commitments to myself, I know I can keep this one too.
And the thing is, it's like, there's a video that I shared one time is that, when you have abs, keeping really good abs and knowing that if I take my shirt off, nobody in this room has a better physique than me.
Right.
When you walk in, you have that kind of thing. It's not the abs in and of themselves, which people can view as superficial. It's when somebody has that physique, I look at them.
How much work.
I already know more about you than anybody else because I know that your discipline's absurd. I know that you don't live off of pleasure over purpose. You have you have delayed gratification. You have extreme discipline. You have self-respect. You have all these different things. And so when you carry that, I always tell people, getting abs is not so that I can show it off on Instagram. It's so that when I walk into a room, I have these abs. I feel good. I look good. I'm performing good. It's a confidence and a mental clarity that takes place that seeps into every area of your life to where now, let's just say you're working this job that you really don't like and you don't get paid well, but you have this dream. You all of the sudden, because of this great confidence, you say, dude, I can make this thing happen. versus the person that doesn't have that, he hasn't earned that confidence yet, he will never bet on himself to go chase that dream. And it's like we were talking about earlier. It's if you were to see you, would you be like, dude, I want to be like that guy. Like, I'm willing to bet on, you know.
I want to meet him, right? So this, you touched on two very important things. The first thing is, I think we see abs so much today that we don't know how rare it actually is to have abs.
Yeah, very.
There are more millionaires than people with abs on the planet.
Yeah.
Right? And what percentage of the population is millionaires? Like less than 1%, right?
For sure.
So let's point out how rare it is to have visible abs. There are more millionaires on the planet than people with abs.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So you are in a very small, distinct, rare category.
Yeah.
If you are a person with abs. If that alone doesn't give you untouchable confidence.
Yeah.
Because you can't buy them.
No.
Right? You have to earn them. That's the first thing. And the second thing you hit on is knowing that you're different when you walk in a room. The analogy I make about your self-appearance and the level of shape you're in, how good a shape you're in, is just like being on the highway. You don't look at a F-150, you don't look at a Navigator, right? But when you see a Lamborghini, you stop.
Yeah.
Who's in the car? What does he do for a living? How old is he? I wonder who's driving that car.
Yeah.
You see a G-Wagon, I wonder what he does. I wonder who's driving it. How old is he? So your physical appearance is your car.
Yeah.
And society is your highway.
Yeah.
Being in great shape makes you a more interesting person, and you 100% get more respect right off the bat because you have something that's rare and that's hard to get.
No, that's good because here's the thing. So I have clients that come to me that have essentially no work ethic. They think that they work hard. Mm-hmm. Hey, Nick, even on my off days, I wake up by 8 a.m. What? 8 a.m.? What are you talking about? So we'll have to, change this, that, and the other. Or like, Nick, I'm meal prepping. This is hard. It's like, dude, you have to change the whole mindset. And so I remember one of my clients came to me, and within 6 weeks, he had lost like 15 pounds.
That's a lot in 6 weeks.
It is, but the problem is right there. Anybody who would have seen him would say, so-and-so, you're doing so good, you've lost 15 pounds. You want to know something? This dude every week was cheating on his diet. So his mom called me and said, hey, I don't know if you know this about my son, but he's doing this, this, and this. And I go, oh, I know. I go, I've been doing this for 15 years. I go, your son should have lost 30 pounds already. And I said, the problem is that people will deceive him. They'll tell him that the 15 pounds is good, but he's only given me 60%. Right. So therefore, your 15 pounds is crap.
It means nothing.
It means nothing. And so I kept telling this client every week in our emails, I would email him every week, hey, I know that my program is not being followed to the T. You have enough body fat on your body that you should have lost weight. You should have, honestly, you have so much body fat on your body that you could actually be dropping 2.5 to 3 pounds a week and be healthy still.
Right.
If you're lean, that's not really healthy to do.
Yeah, that's unhealthy, yeah.
But if you're that heavy, you could easily be doing that right now.
You can lose weight fast the bigger you are.
Right. And so I would tell him this, well, he wouldn't be honest with me. So finally his mom calls me and she tells me he's drinking multiple times a week, he's eating this, he's doing this, he's doing that. And I said, thank you for confirming this. She said, call my son and shoot him out. I said, you don't got to tell me twice. So I call him one morning, and I think when I called him, I even woke him up. And I tore him up for 30 minutes. And I told him, I said, listen to me. I said, your people around you are deceiving you because you're not even giving your all and they're complacent with that. I go, somebody who really loves you is going to shred you to tears when they see you're not working your hardest. They're going to push you into the most uncomfortable position so that you can reach your peak and go to your max. And so I told him, I said, let me tell you what's going to happen. I said, over the next 12 months that you work with me, I go, you're going to start looking so good that he knows I wake up at 4 a.m. I said, you're going to start looking so good. Your performance is going to start getting so high that you're going to call me one day at 3 in the morning and say, Nick, man, I'm already up having my coffee. You're waking up at 4 a.m.? I just got up at 3. Wake up. You're going to start pushing me.
Right.
But the only way that's going to happen is if your physique gets to a certain point and your discipline is to a certain point, when your physique gets like that, you're going to all of a sudden just have this confidence that's going to seep into every area of your life. And I know that he doesn't make a lot of his job, and I know he doesn't like his job. And I told him, I said, you're not ready for this yet, but soon you're going to have a passion that's going to be this job or my passion, safe or risky. And you're going to have so much confidence in yourself that you're going to say, I will risk everything because I'm betting on myself. And that was really how me and you got super connected over the last couple of months was, you know, but also in the distant past, you know, I talked about how one time I had, you know, I had basically got, you know, at one point 10 grand in my savings. And there was a man that I could, you know, be a life coach for, right? Which is so vital. People don't really realize the value of that, but so vital. And it was over $7,500. And I remember calling you and just, you know, because you had paid like, you know, you had like no money one time, and you ended up paying for a life coach a while back.
Right.
And the way this just, you know, totally changed your entire life, right?
Right.
So I'm talking to you. I said, hey, listen, I have 10 grand in my bank account. He wants $7,500. And then I've got to pay like another 2 grand to get this new laptop and this, that, and the other. And I remember you said, Nick, I've known you for so long. I just need you to believe in yourself. And I remember that night, I paid the money, and this dude changed my life, changed my perspective. The mindset that I already had, he made it look like the dirt. And
the law of exposure
scaled me so high in my mindset.
Right.
And I remember telling somebody, I told actually this client that I'd shoot out on the phone, I told him this story. And I told him, I said, let me tell you something, the difference between me and everybody else. I said, I will bet, if I have 10 grand in my pocket, and that's all I have, and if I don't make something, I'm going on the street. I said, I will bet all 10 grand on myself over the Kansas City Chiefs any day of the week. I said, because you know how many people at the Super Bowl bet on the Kansas City Chiefs, right? Here's the thing. The Kansas City Chiefs have a 50-50 chance. They could lose. If I bet on myself, I'm not losing.
I don't lose.
I will put anything in early mornings, late nights, whatever I got to do to make sure that I grind and I become a success and this, that, or the other. And I said, but the only way that I could do that was because I've built up a bank account of confidence, a savings account. I've deposited in it for so long that has built up such a self-esteem where I just say, whatever I put my mind to, I'm going to make it work. And that was really what you told me that day. You said, Nick, look, I've known you for a long time, and right now, I just need you to believe in yourself. And, you know, you were probably one of the only other people I knew in, like, this type of proximity that's actually even done something like that.
Right.
So to hear that from you, that really pushed me over the edge. But those types of confidences, that confidence didn't just come from the street. That confidence came, honestly, from health and fitness, because I know that I stick to my meals. I know that I have I'm not arrogant about it, but I do know that I have a phenomenal physique. And I know that I have really good abs, that if you have a millionaire walk across the street, not many people, unless he's like showing something, not many people are going to like double take at him. A person that takes his shirt off and has a really good physique with really good abs, everybody's going to double take.
Everybody sees that.
And because of that, it wasn't the physique in and of itself, but it was what it took to get that physique,
right?
The behaviors, the discipline, that it built such a confidence where I said, no, I'm going to bet on myself. I'm willing to go all in. I'm willing to be disciplined to a whole new level and scale up my mindset, help other people get their physiques and their lifestyles to this certain point to where they're willing to bet on themselves, and it changes their whole life. And that's why I always say we specifically are lifestyle and mindset coaches, but we just use the health and fitness as the gateway drug to get you to ultimately that whole lifestyle change and mindset change.
100%. So I think people don't understand how much the parallel is of achieving an above average body correlates to everything else in life. And you can look at it in terms of how to build muscle or anything in life, but it is a scientific fact that stress is a precursor for growth, right? So when we talk about...
Even muscularly.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's good. That's
so
really good. Wow.
When you talk about building a bicep or building a pec or a quad, if there's no stress, you don't grow.
That's very good. Wow. Wow.
One of the things that Muhammad Ali said is, I don't start counting my crunches, until they start to hurt.
That stress quote, even if that was for no viewer but only for me, that just hit me, bro. That's good.
And it's repeated itself everywhere I've been in life. When I decided to sign a contract for money that I didn't have in my account for a coach, that was a level of stress I've never felt. But it ended up bringing a different me to the table. Growth. It forced me to grow. Right?
Yeah.
So when people think this is just about like chicken and treadmills, right? This is your
life.
marriage. This is your business. This is your parenting.
This is life.
Right. Stress is a precursor to growth. And when you're talking about this kid, he doesn't understand that stress is the opportunity. And this is, as a performance coach, this is one of the things I talk to people about now, is because people don't want stress. They don't want challenge. They don't want adversity, right? But when you can look at it like the way we look at training, is our goal is to make we were just talking about it. Our goal is to make every rep as hard as we can possibly. We're actively seeking out stress. Why? Because we know on the other side of that stress is a stimulus.
Well, it was like
we need the stress for the stimulus.
That's right.
And it's not different emotionally, spiritually, business-wise. Stress is a precursor to growth. You will not grow if you do not experience stress. So when we start talking about the fundamentals of training and what it should be like, what it should feel like, how hard it should feel, this is because we know what comes from it. But people don't understand that the stress is the opportunity. And this is what I coach people on. When you wake up and you don't feel like it, you have to be aware enough to understand that that's the opportunity to build your confidence. The fact that you don't feel like it. You want to skip the meal. That's the opportunity. People make the mistake of thinking that we want to wake up at 4. We want to eat the meals. Those are my opportunities to be different than you.
Yeah.
Right?
And eventually it does turn into a want.
Yeah.
Eventually, but not at first. It's a discipline. And it's not a feeling, it's a discipline. But it's like that's a really good word. If that's not probably the best word we've had on this whole episode, is the stress
is a precursor.
But it literally is, even in fitness.
It is a prerequisite.
We have to stress the muscle.
You have
for it to grow. I mean, and the thing I think that really helps you getting to a new level of stress, like we talked about, is getting around those higher level thinking people. And the reason I say that is because like when I started with my life coach, he literally timed out everything for all of my posts on my story, to where I remember, telling somebody, I said, this is really stressing me out. Like every day remembering like this.
What a coincidence.
It is stressing me out.
What a
But
coincidence.
after like 4 days, it became rhythm.
It's who you are.
But not only that, even tonight at the gym, right? So like this is why I think that if we're around higher level thinking people, iron, like the scripture says, iron sharpens iron. And so tonight at the gym, there was multiple times where it was like, I was about to finish my set. And because of you sitting there yelling at me or whatever, I got 2 or 3 more in.
Right.
And then I remember on our last set for biceps, you were failing. And I said, when you hit failure, I said, you got 5 more. Mm-hmm. And you literally pull it up to like right here. And I said, 1, 2. Yeah. You would have quit right there.
Oh, 100%.
But there was somebody next to you to scale up, just like there was somebody next to me when you were yelling at me to scale up my mind. You can't do it on your own. So when people talk about, this is the one thing that I've never agreed with this, is when people say, oh, I'm self-made.
No.
You're not. There's no such thing.
If you are self-made, you're not fulfilling your potential, right?
Yeah.
Exactly like you're saying, if you want to get to somewhere you haven't been, you have to find somebody that's already there.
Yeah.
And I think this is why people get coaches, right? You want to be in better shape, but you don't know how to get there.
Yeah.
You can only go to the capacity of what you know. You don't know what you don't know, right? So I really think coaches do a couple things, right? One is they tell you to do things that you don't want to do.
Yeah.
2, they have conversations that you don't want to have.
Yeah.
And if you have a good coach, he can turn you into things that you didn't think you could be.
Right there, real quick, I want you to keep going in just a second, but that's the thing. So I was chewing out that client for 30 minutes, right? But then I started speaking such life into him. And I said, do you want to know why I'm so hard on you? And I said, you're exactly who I used to be. I go, you're the weird kid. Yeah. I go, your friends, you don't even have hardly any friends. All those people thought you were weird in high school. I go, do you know I was the same way? I was lucky to get invited to parties, bro.
You don't know what's there yet.
No. And I said, because I was so alone and like weird all the time, it woke up the genius and work ethic in me to say, I'm just going to go train. Yeah. I'm just going to train. And then I started grasping, all this attention from people. And I said, you have this potential to be that weird kid that was thrown out that turns into a genius because of your work ethic. And I said, you've never had somebody speak real life into you. Whenever I told him, hey, in 12 months, you're going to be calling me at 3 a.m. and saying, Nick, get up, get your butt out of bed. Mm-hmm. It's 3 a.m. We don't wait till 4. We get up at 3. And I started telling him, you have so much potential. But the thing is, you've never had anybody scale up your life. And I went on for like 15 minutes after chewing him out. Right. And he ended up apologizing. He goes, Nick, I feel so bad for lying to you. And I go, good, you should.
You should.
And he told me.
You didn't hurt me. You hurt yourself.
Right. And he said, I'll never forget what he told me. In fact, his mom just texted me tonight and literally in all caps said, Nick, thank you, thank you, thank you. He just left our house and both, like, literally just sent me this long text. But he told me on the phone, he said, Nick, not only have I never had anybody speak to me the way you just spoke to me, because I tore him up.
Right.
He said, I've never had anybody speak life into me the way you just spoke life into
100%.
me. And I said, that's my job. Like, first I'm going to give you the reality check that you need.
Right.
But the second thing is, I'm going to speak you up to the potential that you have that you didn't even know that you had because, like I said, your friends, your family, and your girlfriend have deceived you your entire life.
They don't know what's there.
And they don't mean to deceive you. They love you, but nevertheless, they're deceiving you.
Right.
They're thinking that this is okay when the reality is this is your 60%.
Right. And another thing is it keeps coming back to this self-awareness and this idea of you don't know what you don't know. Just like you said, they're not doing it on purpose. They're judging you off of who you've shown them you are.
Yeah.
You don't know what your potential is until you have somebody that's gone 10 levels past that.
That's right.
That's what coaches do. Say, you think your limit is here, but I've been where you're at, and I know that the ceiling is actually here. Right?
Yeah, and I think, to kind of like bring it all to a head is, I think the one thing that people are going to say, it's really what me and you could have said when we were in this position of getting a coach is, a coach, a nutritionist, a mentor, whatever it is, is, no, I just don't really have the finances right now. Neither did we.
Right.
We put, first of all, the biggest thing I talk about on social media right now, one of the biggest things I talk about is you have to change your mind. You're not paying for anything.
Right.
This is not a payment. You're not paying me thousands of dollars, or you're not paying me X, Y, or Z. I didn't pay my life coach $7,500. I invested that money. You're not paying for anything when it comes to self-development and getting to the fact of you fulfilling your dreams. Those finances, first of all, you're going to say, oh, I don't have the funds, I'll do it when I have the funds. You're not even going to get it until you get your mindset right anyway.
Right.
You're always going to have limited finances.
You're never going to have it.
No. So you need to invest and realize that's what it is. And if you're willing to double down and triple down on yourself, that's what it is. And it's an investment where the ROI is exponentially greater than anything you can imagine. Exactly.
Perfect. So you hit on something really good. I remember when I was on the call with my coach, and I was like, man, to be quite honest with you, like, I can't afford to do this. Like, I'm not trying to lie to you. I literally don't have it in my account. And he said, that tells me that you can't afford to not do it, is the fact that you don't have the money.
Totally reverse thinking.
Right? He said, you can't afford to not do this. Or what are you going to do if you don't do this? How are you going to improve your situation? How are you going to get your business going? He was like, what's the worst that could possibly happen?
You just don't make any more money, but you're already not making money.
So, and people are, I understand to an extent why people are afraid of risk. But again, you're not going to find any monumentally successful person
that didn't risk it.
That didn't take a risk.
But here's the thing. This is why it goes back to our previous point. Why health and fitness is the gateway drug is that you're never going to have the confidence to bet on yourself
unless
and
you
take that risk
unless you build
until you have deposited that type of discipline and acquired a certain level of physique, which automatically develops a mentality that comes with it. It's a byproduct
right.
of that physique and that work ethic
right.
that says, I will invest and pay anything on myself any day of the
right.
week because of that. So it just goes back to our previous point of just, look, at the end of the day, the health and fitness, it's the gateway drug.
Right. And I think a lot of people...
Look at every top CEO and like, millionaire, billionaire. What is the common thing they have in common?
Right.
They all wake up at 3 or 4 a.m. They all go work out. They all look good. They all meal prep. You know what I mean? It's the common
right.
thing.
Right. So one of the things that's interesting and what gave me confidence to take that leap of faith is when we were on the phone and I was asking all these questions about, okay, well, how am I going to do this? How am I going to, and he was like, look, dude, he was like, you're in great shape, right? I was like, yeah, I'm in awesome shape. He was like, there are things that you have to do every day. And if you do the things we tell you to do, if you do them every day, you'll be successful. He was like, you eat a certain amount of meals every day, right? I said, yeah. He said, you eat a certain amount of calories every day, right? I said, yeah. He said, you train a certain amount every day, right? I said, yeah. He said, this is no different. If you know how to be consistent, and if you are in elite shape, you've built discipline and you've built consistency. If you have those two personality traits, you can take those two things and plant them into anything, and fruit will grow. In your marriage, your business, your parenting, your spiritual life. Those are the two key components, right? It's discipline and consistency, right? So this young kid you're talking about, what he doesn't understand, he, just like we're talking about, he still thinks it's about like the chicken and treadmills. He doesn't understand that he is building the foundation of what's going to be a vehicle for him to have whatever he wants.
Yeah.
Right? And that's how they put it to me on the call. They was like, you already have the character profile of a millionaire, whoever you want to be. You just don't have the information.
This was exactly what Wes told me. Wes told me on the phone. He goes, Nick. I remember he literally tells me on our first call. He said, Nick. His exact words were, dude, you're already jacked. He goes, the thing is, you're already jacked and you already wake up at 4 a.m. You already have this work ethic.
90% of it is done.
He goes, most of my clients don't.
They're not in shape, dude.
No, he goes, a lot of my clients are fat. A lot of my clients have no work ethic. A lot of my clients still think waking up at 7 a.m. or just beating the sun is early.
You've done the hard part.
He goes, you already have the lifestyle. He goes, now all I need you to do is turn it into a reality show by pulling out your phone and documenting.
Do it every day.
Yeah, that's it. So, first you've got to acquire that, and there's steps to it. So I remember I was talking to this client that we've been talking about, because he actually literally emails me today, says, hey, he's like 25 or 26. And so he tells me, he goes, hey, my mom just reached out to me, told me to talk to you about continuing your program after this program is done. I said, yeah, give me a call. So he calls me, and I said, what your mom was talking about was, we were talking about getting you on my business and mindset coaching. We both agreed you're not there yet. Right now, there's stages to this. You can't just jump into these top type things. Right now, you have to prove to not only me, but you have to prove to yourself that you have the work ethic to follow certain things dietarily, where you can say no to these simple pleasures.
You're not the right person yet.
No, you're not. You have to develop that character trait first, and which by the way, the physique is just going to be a byproduct of that lifestyle. And after you have that, then we can start talking about certain mindset things. Because if I tell you to go bet on yourself right now,
you're going to lose.
Not only are you going to lose, you don't have the work ethic. No, you're going to lose. You don't have the work ethic. And quite frankly, you don't even believe in yourself enough right now, bro. Right. Like, if you saw yourself, you know darn well that you would never be like, yeah, I'm going to bet on him. Because you don't even have the work ethic or the mindset. So right now, continue with my program. You're going to start another program after this. We're going to get you shredded. We're going to get you the best physique you've ever had. We're going to have you feeling better than you've ever felt. We're going to totally fix your blood work. And as you do this, what you're going to realize is you're just going to wake up one day and you're going to start walking into your job. You're going to start walking into your room. And all of a sudden, you're going to notice that whenever you're wearing your shirt, your chest sticks out over your stomach and your arms have veins on them. And all of a sudden, you just feel confident.
Right.
And as you start to develop that is earned through this process.
Right.
Now we can start talking about changing your entire life to where now you're going to start providing for your family in a new way. Everyone's going to start looking at you different. Right. And it's the difference between the person that confidence and the way you carry yourself is the difference between somebody who can sell an $800 program and a $2,800 program. I remember I literally had a client tell me the other day, she's one of my most expensive paying clients. She literally said, Nick, because of your work ethic and because of the she literally said, because of the confidence that exudes off of you, she goes, it's the reason I was willing to pay you what I did.
Right.
That is because of somebody who believes in themselves, like myself or you, believes in yourself because you've made these daily deposits and dividends for so long, and it's just been a byproduct with your physique, with your mentality, with all these different things. So you can't just jump into all that. There's stages and levels to it, and there's levels that, if I'm just being honest, I don't look at myself as an expert. I'm a student of this, and I'm at the very beginning stages. But my beginning stage is like such a far gone thing for so many other people, right? And then there's people like my coach who I go, dude, you're like so far beyond where I'm at, you know what I mean? But the same thing with you, it's like people look at you and go, dude, that's really where I want to be. But then you look at your coach and you go, dude, I'm a peon.
Right.
I am like nothing.
Right. And I think that's part of the journey, right? Part of the journey is understanding that it's a moving finish line.
Yeah.
Right?
That's right.
Because when I first started, I was like, man, if I get here, cool. I got there and I was like, nah, that's it. No. Man, if I get here, cool. And the line just keeps moving, right? And another thing you said, which is interesting, is like confidence is something, when you talked about your client feeling confidence, people feel authenticity, right? One of the reasons you chose the coach you did is because of how confident he was, right?
Yeah.
But it's because you can't fake confidence. You can say cool stuff, you can put cool words together, you can paint cool pictures, but at the end of the day, when we talk about people trusting you, right? You can't fake who you are. You can't fake confidence. And when you've overcome things, right? When you've put yourself under stress and come out of the other side, you understand that other people can go through the same process that you went through. So when people make their goals this big thing, just like I was talking about when I was on the phone with my coach, I was like, oh, this big crazy goal. And he was like, man, you know?
Yeah.
To see how small it was for him.
I remember, so like my coach, every Saturday, he has a group. He has over 20,000 clients worldwide. That's mind-boggling to me. But over 20,000 worldwide. Well, on these Zoom calls, you know, it's not, in comparison to that, it's not very many, but it's still like 150, 180 people on these group Zoom calls every Saturday. And I remember one dude came on there, and because he does a live Q&As, so they asked him, hey, Wes, you know, because Wes makes $3 million a month, right? I mean, like,
Wes is a legend.
Yeah, in the fitness industry, I mean, especially at $3 million a month,
that's unheard of.
That's $36 million a year in the fitness industry.
It's unheard of.
It's totally off the charts and what we think is possible or whatever. But you know, he's sitting there, and by the way, keep in mind this guy just got out of jail 10 years ago, doing 10 years in the penitentiary, and he turned this whole thing around, right? So we're on these calls, and a dude asks him and says, "Hey Wes, look, man, there's this business deal to like help my business, but it's risky and like, man, I don't know what to do." And he goes, "Stop!" The way Wes talks is like, "Hey, shut up, stop talking, listen to me." He goes, "How much does your business make a year?" He goes, "Well, we're making like $100,000 a year." He goes, "And you're actually coming on my group call in front of 180 people, and you're wasting my time talking about something that stresses you that only makes $100,000 a year?" He goes, "Let me tell you something. Do not come back on this call asking me a question unless you're talking about making $100,000 a month."
There you go.
And for him to like say that, the $100,000 a year was so small where he goes, "You're just not even thinking." And that was literally the call where he literally said, "You have to start getting around higher level thinking people. You have to." And you know, when he said that, it just is like, you realize, wow, my issue is so small because I'm thinking way too small. That simplicity of just a scaling up of the mind, it just blows you away.
No, so, and again, it goes back to like this law of exposure, right? Yeah. I had a meeting with my business coach, I want to say back in December. And we were doing an audit of my business, and you know, this is when I was just like strictly fitness, right? And we were going through the business, and things look good. And he was like, "You don't like this?" I was like, "What do you mean?" He was like, "You're not excited about it." He was like, "It doesn't like ignite like a fire in you." I was like, "Yeah, it's cool. Like I'm good at it, And I was like, "I like it. I want more. Like I want to be more effective, right?" And he was like, "Okay." He was like, "The way you look, the things you've done, the way you articulate, you're intelligent." He was like, "Well, I want you to look at these guys. These are guys I had never heard of, right?" He was like, "I want you to look at these guys and look at what they do, right?" And this is how I got into performance coaching, right? I go and look at Garrett White, a guy makes 8 figures a year, right? I look at Ben Newman, makes 8 figures a year, and I'm looking at this thing that they do, and they're captivating, and they change lives, and they help guys perform better and make more money, and also get them in shape, and they do all these things, and I was like, that's what I want. But I didn't know it existed, right? Like I didn't allow it to be a possibility, right? So I think, again, that's one of the things that coaches are for.
Yeah.
They can turn you into things that you did not think you could be, or that you didn't even know existed, right?
Yeah.
This guy says, "Oh, $100,000 in his mind." He's probably like, "Man, if I can make 200, that's life changing." And Wes is like, "Dude, like you realize that like things are unlimited out here, right?"
Yeah, and that's where he's like, "Guys, I made $3 million.
It's unlimited,
yeah.
right?"
Yeah,
so that's what happened to me. He was like, "Dude, like go look at this guy." And I'm researching him, and I look at him, and bro made like $40 million last year.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, so to sum it all up, I think honestly the best thing that was even said on this whole thing is really what you said in regards to it doesn't matter what you're doing. Ultimately, stress is your breakthrough.
Stress is a precursor for growth.
That's very good.
Stress is a precursor
which we
for
know
growth.
is a fact in fitness.
Inevitable.
Yeah, that's really good. Well, man, this has been awesome.
It's been a pleasure, man. This
Honestly,
is great.
It's sharpened me. It's edified me. It's energized me.
100%.
Man, this has been really good. So, you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this and just priceless knowledge. And just real quick, how do people find you?
Yeah, 100%. You guys can follow me on Instagram at _ Kidane, Kidane, and on Facebook. If you are on Facebook, you can add me at CJ Jones.
So go ahead and follow him. The guy is a wealth of knowledge, doing phenomenal things in the health and fitness industry as well as mindset and performance coaching. Good now at over 10 years, good friend of mine and everything else. So you guys, I hope that this helps you. I hope this blesses you. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out or email us at lifestyleofeden@gmail.com. Stay tuned for the next one.